Hey everybody, looking at the 24th Sunday, which is September 11th. 21 years, I believe, from that terrible event, though we may not make a big recognition of it, but still be mindful of that day that changed our lives and still affecting us, still changing our lives as well. All right, well, I'd like to read from Luke chapter 15, 1 through 10. Now, this is the shorter version of the gospel. Explain, we omitted the prodigal son. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them he addressed this parable. "What man among you, having 100 sheep and losing one, would not leave the 99 in the desert and go after the lost one till he finds it? And when he does find it, he sets it on his shoulders. With great joy, upon his arrival home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and says to them, 'Rejoice with me because I found my lost sheep.' I tell you, in just the same way, there'll be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who have no need of repentance. For what woman, having 10 coins and losing one, would not light a lamp and sweep the house, searching carefully until she finds it? And when she does find it, she calls together her friends and neighbors and says to them, 'Rejoice with me because I have found the coin that I lost.' In just the same way, I tell you, there'll be rejoicing among the angels of God over one sinner who repents." Most likely, there's no chapter in the New Testament as well known and so dearly loved as the 15th chapter of Luke's Gospel, which we just read a portion of. It's been called the Gospel in the Gospel, as if it contained the very distilled essence of the good news which Jesus came to tell us. As I mentioned, that with the 3 lost, the sheep, the coin, and the son. And on Sunday you have an option, the long version, which included the prodigal son, or the shorter version, which I just read. And to read the prodigal son along with these 3, it's just too much. It's too overwhelming. The prodigal son, so much could be said about that. So let's touch this little theme here, which also plays into the prodigal son as well. Now, these parables arose out of a situation. It was an offense to the scribes and Pharisees that Jesus associated with men and women who, by the Orthodox, were labeled as sinners. Now, I want to remind you, Jesus never called anyone a sinner. There's always someone else, the scribes, the Pharisees. Jesus never described anyone as a sinner. The Pharisees gave to people who did not keep the law a general classification. They called them people of the land. And there was a complete barrier between the Pharisees and the people of the land. To marry a daughter to one of them was like exposing her bound and helpless to a lion. The Pharisaic regulations laid it down: when a man is one of the people of the land, entrust no money to him, take no testimony from him, trust him with no secret, do not appoint him guardian of an orphan, and do not make him custodian of charitable funds, do not accompany him on a journey. Wow. They have no use for them whatsoever, as you see. A Pharisee was forbidden to be the guest of any such man or to have him as his guest. He was even forbidden, so far as possible, to have any business dealings with him. They were to avoid every contact with the people who did not observe the petty details of the law. Think about being ostracized. Obviously, they would be shocked to the core in the way which Jesus now accompanied people who were not only rank outsiders, but sinners. Contact with them would necessarily defile. So you see this contrast. You can't even talk to them. You don't have any social contact, be with them at all. And now Jesus, supposedly this prophet, the man of God, he's with them? What kind of person is this? This is totally baffling. Now today, hopefully we think those are the ones that we should go out to, but not back then. And that's why Jesus addresses this parable to them. Now we understand these parables much clearly if we remember that the strict Jews did not say there'd be joy in heaven over one sinner who repents. No, that was not their thinking. That was not their philosophy. Oh no, there'd be joy in heaven over one sinner who is obliterated before God. Not saved, but destroyed by God. Now, I hate to say it, but I know there's people today who still hold that position, right? Who take some sort of satisfaction. And people are thinking that they were going to go to hell, and that's what they want. And they'll be greatly disappointed if that's not true. They're no different than they were than the Pharisees here 2,000 years ago. They look sadistically forward not to the saving, but to the destruction of the sinner. And like I said, unfortunately, we know there are groups and Christians who call themselves Christians who will just live that way. And so then Jesus tells them the story, the parable of the lost sheep and the shepherd's joy. How many paintings we've seen with Jesus with the sheep. Matthew also tells about the lost sheep, the parable of the lost sheep, but Luke does a little twist to it. In Matthew, he just finds the lost sheep, and in Luke, that nice touch of Jesus putting the sheep on his shoulder, and that's the image we see, the gentleness, the care, the caress of Jesus. And somebody I'd like to picture myself and yourself maybe, that Jesus is holding you, that he accepts you. Now the shepherd back then in Judea had a very hard and dangerous task. Pastures were scarce. The narrow central plateau was only a few miles wide, and it plunged down to the wild cliffs and the terrible devastation of the desert. There were no restraining walls, and the sheep would wander. And a writer, commentary, George Adam Smith, wrote of the shepherd, on some high moor across which at night the hyenas howl when you meet him, sleepless, far-sighted, weather-beaten arm, leaning on his staff, looking but out over his scattered sheep, every one of them on his heart. And you understand why the shepherd of Judea sprang in front of the people's history, why they gave this name to kings, the symbol of the prophets, and why even Christ took him as a type of self-sacrifice, Jesus the good shepherd. For the shepherd had a unique relationship with sheep. It wasn't just an animal keeper, you know. It was family, sometimes even more than family. He really did give his life for the sheep. The shepherd was personally responsible for the sheep. If a sheep was lost, the shepherd must at least bring home the fleece to show how it had died. These shepherds were experts in tracking and could follow the straying sheep's footprints for miles across the hills. There was not a shepherd for whom it was not all in the day's work to risk his life for his sheep. Now, I know some people who actually risk their lives for their pet dog. A friend, his son, went into a burning building, his burning house, I should say, to save his dog. And he came out with third-degree burns, he almost lost his life. He went in to save his dog. So there are people who do have that attachment and love. But imagine having the same love for, let's say, 100 sheep, 99, whatever it is, each and every one. It's incredible. Many of the flocks were communal flocks, which means they belonged not to individuals but to villages. There'd be 2 or 3 shepherds in charge. Those whose flocks were safe would arrive home on time and bring news that one shepherd was still out on the mountain side searching for a sheep which was lost. The whole village would be upon the watch, and when in distance they would see the shepherd coming home with the sheep across his shoulders, there'd be rise from the whole community, a shout of joy, of thanksgiving. Imagine the whole town waiting, looking, hoping, and they spot him. There he is, and guess what? He has the sheep. And this is the picture of Jesus drew of God. Jesus said what God is like. God is as glad when a lost sinner is found as a shepherd is when a strayed sheep is brought home. A great saint said, God too knows the joy of finding things that have gone lost. There's a wondrous thought here. It's truly a tremendous truth that God is kinder than men. The Orthodox would write off the tax collectors and the sinners as beyond the pale and deserving of nothing but destruction. Not God. Men may give up hope on a sinner, not God. God loves the folk who never stray away. But in his heart, there's the joy of joys when the lost one is found and comes home. It is 1,000 times easier to come back to God than to come home to the bleak criticism of men. Wow. I just want to kind of just pause there, just that, on the way the lost coin, and same thing, the homes are small, they were different, and that little window of 18 inches wide is dark, dirt floor, nearly impossible to find. You drop a little coin worth 4 pence, 4 cents, but it was like a day's wage. And it could be what you have to live on. Well, sometimes they have a hat and it had 10 coins. It was like the wife's, what she would live on, and showed that she was like having that little hat with the 10 coins showed it was like wearing a ring. It showed that you were married. And not only that, when you went broke, they couldn't take that money from you. So you have some sort of security. And so she looked and searched and found it in great joy. Let me just say this God that goes out with the sheep, who looks for the sheep and the coin, and who rejoices. No Pharisee had ever dreamed of a God like that. A great Jewish scholar admitted that this is the one absolutely new thing which Jesus taught men about God, that he actually search for men. The Jew might have agreed that if a man came crawling home to God in self-abasement and prayed for pity, he might find it. Okay, they give you that. If the sinner on his own turned to God, looking, repentant, maybe God will forgive. But he would never have conceived of a God who went out to search for the sinners. We believe in the seeking love of God because we see that Jesus came to save us. So it's not us who run to God, it's God who comes seeking us. And that's one thing the Jew did not understand, never imagined, pictured, that God is the one who seeks them. So no matter where we are in life, you or maybe loved ones, when don't give up hope. For God doesn't give up hope, and he's seeking, he's searching. In the end, God will triumph, God will win. God bless you.